Alright. Had to do a bunch of social media stuff that I can only do when the show is live. That's what happens when you're a one-man band. So shout out to everybody for being patient as I work my way through it. I appreciate it. Maybe one day I'll figure out how to get automated stuff on all platforms that I use for social media. Until then, you'll get to hear the entirety of the song Humble Beliefs, or as people from Houston, Texas would say, humble beliefs. I'm just kidding. They say humble because there's a city in Houston. This is how you actually blend in pretty well. If you've ever come to Houston or gonna plan to come to Houston, you don't want people to know that you're not from here, which is some people's goal and objective, right? You say humble because that's like one of the biggest differentiators for like any person that comes to Houston. If you say humble, they know you're not from around here or you just got here. There's a little lowdown on Houston. Anyway, don't ask why that's the case. That's just how it's always been in my entire life. Who cares? People are weird. The South is weird. We are here to talk about something else that is weird. It's episode 4 of season 39 of the latest season of my 6th favorite sport, the challenge. The challenge. This is episode 4. I'm coming out. I did do a reaction to episode 3, 2, and 1. Make sure you go back and check those out. Like and subscribe, by the way. I feel like I realize now, like, people do it a lot more frequently when you tell them to do it up front. Any subscription, greatly appreciated. As you all know, the point of the Broke Boy Sports Podcast is for me to get so rich off selling this podcast that as soon as I sign a deal to do it for like $100 million, I just stop doing it and run away. That's my plan, to make it massively successful so that I can be a cool kid who gets to talk into a microphone for a living. I love to talk. I love to hear the sound of my own voice. Not really. I don't like listening back to playbacks, but I do like the monitor setting type deal. Anyway, doing that instead of getting a real job is my goal, or a real hard job, which would require me to do work that's not. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. A lot of shit happened in episode 4. A lot of important shit, to be honest with you. So let's take it from the top, shall we? The arrival portion of this episode. So after elimination, Raven is back. Raven returns after defeating Hui in what was the name of that channel? Dirty Deeds. There we go. Dirty Deeds. By the way, I don't think they played Dirty Deeds during that elimination. Maybe because Dirty Deeds is actually expensive. That's AC/DC, right? Anyway, she's hoping, and I think erroneously, she's hoping that her victory is kind of like a reset button on her relationship with everybody in the house, because she did take out, quote unquote, one of the internationals, since we're still pretending that the U.S. International alliances are real, even though this is now the 3rd time in a row that somebody from the U.S. Alliance, even though I will say the first one, the U.S. Alliance member was called into elimination. But this is back-to-back where the U.S. Alliance member has been voted in. And let's see if that trend continues, shall we? With episode 4, as the plot continues to thicken around what are some of the goals of some of the players who were in the house this season. So, That being said, that's basically what comes back. She goes and does a diary entry where she's just like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm hoping that I restarted our connection with each other. We can really get along and take this game as far as we possibly can, all the way to the end, and potentially win it. Coriel starts stepping up behind the scenes. They basically cut back to what happened right before, or like before they all walked into the arena, and it's Coriel who got voted. I think he was first eliminated in his initial season. He was eliminated by Huey, if I'm not mistaken. Coriel's the guy that looks exactly like Kimball Walker. If you take a photo of them side by side, I tweeted that to Coriel, and he was like, yeah, that's like my long lost brother. I keep mentioning that because like it's just kind of wild to me that not that I look up to them, but it's just really funny to me because like a lot of them are like really online, because a lot of them have business ventures that are directly correlated to like getting access to people. Like most of them don't have normal jobs. They go on to like use this as a launching pad. Like Corey L talks about how he wants to use this as a platform for him to be able to do other stuff outside of this and be able to inspire all the queer black kids all over the world. And shout out to him for doing that. But they did catch him slipping though. They caught my man slipping out here in the streets. Zahara is Zara, right? I don't know why. They call her Zaza. Her name is Zara. This is one of those weird situations where the nickname is just as long as the actual name of the person. I'm assuming Zara is not her real first name. Like, it's part of her first name, which is quite common for people who have to deal with English speakers, I'll say, on a regular basis. So, she, like I said before, Raven thinks that she's like got some kind of cachet with the Alliance because she's got an elimination win. I think the only thing that she's probably bought herself is a little bit more time to try and figure out how to betray the people that betrayed her. Coriel starts, like I said before, he was trying to get people to say Zara's name and put her into elimination as the main vote. Guess what? Zara is an international, even though she is a part of an alliance she's a part of an alliance in some way, shape, or form with Corey, because the alliances are still kind of blurred a little bit, right? And she's still technically a part of an alliance with Corey, and so that would be kind of like flipping up on a person. She catches wind that her name is being said around the house, and subsequently, just like every person ever who's heard their name being said around the house, they immediately start saying the name of the person who said their name, but will not receive any consequences for trying to say the name because somebody else is saying theirs. Anyway, Coriel made it very clear in episode 3 and episode 4 within the edits that he is down to make sure that if you're going to try and keep your hands without any blood on them whatsoever in terms of like picking somebody to go into elimination, because they remember all the ladies burn voted against Raven on the off chance that she did come back, and I think a lot of them thought she was coming back and they just wanted to say her name to see if she would lose, because they know that there's actually a good chunk. So there's 11 ladies left. You take out Raven from that count, that's 10, and Raven's got a pretty good chance of beating like 5 out of them, because I think Raven can beat Nerys. Straight up. We know she can beat Huhui now. I think she can beat Zara, and I think she can beat, obviously, Big T, right? I think she can beat Melissa, because just like physical prowess and presence overall, Raven's shown a lot of poise under a shit ton of pressure throughout the course of her time in the show, because she's basically never been in an alliance because everybody tries to tag her with like this shady label, all that kind of stuff like that. They all burn voted, and I'm assuming that's because they're afraid of Raven, and they wanted to make sure that Raven was voted into elimination by the men, so that if Raven does come back, they can still pretend, they can still keep the facade of like, look, we didn't even vote for you, girl. We went out here and we protected you. The guys ganged up on you, which would endear her to the ladies, but under false pretenses, right? One of my favorite songs ever, by the way. Have you ever seen the movie, MMA movie, high school kid who has like a real propensity for fighting, Never Back Down. There we go. The main song, the main training montage song is False Pretenses. It's so good. I'm actually going to listen to it after the show is over with. Anyway, Coriel starts saying Zara's name. She's upset about it. None of the ladies technically get their hands dirty in terms of like voting for anybody into elimination. And so Corey was like, hey, just so you know, like, if you're going to give us this kind of power, it's going to be our decision as to who goes into elimination. And there's no telling who we could vote for. He was kind of like flirting with the idea of potentially doing something else. And then, of course, they go to the diary entry where Jay is like, whoa, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And Corey's just going to keep digging his grave deeper and deeper. You know, like the snake that Jay is. Anyway, he's got that going on. Nobody's trying to back him or whatever, at least up front, because the ladies, more so than most seasons, have found themselves like kind of attracted or like linked up and paired up with the guys seemingly a lot faster and at a higher frequency. And I think that has something to do with the age gap being significantly smaller, if you know what I mean. So like the age gap between, because these are all players who are either in their, they're not rookies. So they're either in their second, third, or fourth season in the case of Jay and Michelle, who had done 3 seasons prior to this, and I think they have the most experience on the challenge. So they may be older and stuff like that, but they're still relatively close in age range to the other competitors. And everybody's single. So, I think everybody except Ed and I'm trying to think of who else. I know somebody out there. Oh, Mariah. Allegedly. So we'll see. We'll talk about her a little bit later on in the show, but nonetheless, the retribution for Coriel's actions seem to be the theme of this episode, and we'll talk about how that shows itself throughout the course of it. But before we do that, by the way, the Zyrtec kicked in. If you watched episode 3, you know I was out there dying. Your boy was sneezing all over the place. Zyrtec is kicked in. I am completely stuffed up, which is a lot better than being runny and having the cocaine nose, the cocaina nose. Anyway, I think that's what I'm going to start calling it on this show. I got that cocaine nose, and hopefully the people get the inside joke that it is a reference to my allergies, not the cocaine. Anyway, let's talk about the daily for this week. So, starting off, the pot is currently at $356,000. A lot better than where it was at the end of episode 1, where they had $0 added into the bank when they could have had $50,000. A lot better than just the measly $6,000 that they were able to add in that one challenge. That still is kind of stunning that they were able to pull that off. This seems like this season the budget is a lot higher. They had an ATV buggy challenge last episode where they had multiple fixtures and stuff like that. Seemed like it was pretty expensive, and the eliminations seem like they're a lot more expensive as well too. So we have that. The challenge, the daily for this episode is called Under Control. If you haven't caught on to the theme, every single challenge has the term under. Has the word control involved in it, because this is the control level of this 3-leveled season of the challenge. So as the chaos phase draws closer, the heavy-handed control references continue. Under control, imagine, if you will, all the contenders there in Croatia, right on the shore. They're on a concrete shore, so they don't have to run out into the water, into the sand, or anything like that. But they swim. They jump into the water, swim off into the distance, not too far away. There's a series of buoys that are all in a triangle formation near each other. There's a set of white ones and there's a set of black ones, all equal amounts on both sides. I think there's 25 total pieces, and there's 1 piece per buoy, so one is slightly uneven. And underneath each buoy, there is a puzzle piece, and each puzzle piece is a different depth based off the buoy. There's no designator for how far down it is and stuff like that, but you know for a fact that there are some that are deeper and further down than others, and there are some that are closer to the surface. So the objective, quite simple. There are a bunch of puzzle pieces, and then even further into the distance, there are a series of 4 platforms that represent 4 puzzle-solving stations. Once you solve the puzzles at each one of those stations, you actually unhook the puzzle station and then swim it over to a stable station where there's a podium in the center. You hook all the puzzle pieces together. They act as buoys for the main puzzle, solving station or whatever. And then once all 23 people, this is episode 4. Yes, there's an uneven amount. So once all 21 people get onto the platform, the challenge is over. If you can do all that in under 15 minutes, you win. So they start having a conversation leading into 15 minutes, by the way, not a lot of time, especially when you're in the water, in open water. We'll talk about the challenge that goes along with the daily, right? So beforehand, they're having a conversation, they're talking it out, all this kind of stuff like that. There's people communicating back and forth as to who should do what, where for this challenge. Obviously, you want the strong swimmers swimming the furthest out to get to the furthest buoys, and you want the strong swimmers going to the deepest of the puzzle pieces in terms of further down under the water. Ed shows off some pretty impressive swimming skills, especially for a dude who definitely looks like he's just gym muscles, but clearly has some athletic ability. That's very impressive. Coriel, who, by the way, holding it down for all the black people who have ever been on the challenge that did not know how to swim before they got on the show. Shout out Darrell, one of the OGs, one of the legends. he didn't know how to swim for like 6 seasons, bro. And he finally got it together towards the end. It was not good. He wasn't like Wes level. Wes is probably one of the most impressive swimmers in the history of the challenge. Other than, I want to say, the Challenge World Championships had a young lady who was on the Australian swim team. Her name was Sarah, and she was basically a human speedboat. It was kind of crazy to watch. She had a challenge where she carried her partner. Her partner grabbed onto her back, and then she swam him down and back to get his puzzle piece without and beat everybody else still. So she swam down and back to get her puzzle piece, and then swam him down and back to get his set of puzzle pieces, and they won the challenge like by a mile. It was crazy, bro. It basically got to the point where if you're production and you see something like that, you have to reduce the number of water challenges that are involved in the season. That's what it really comes down to. Cocaina nose kicking in right there. That, like, you see something like that, you're like, oh, well, we need to scrap like half of these water challenges, bro. We can't have somebody with that big of an advantage in terms of like swimming or in terms of one aspect of this game, because we want it to be fair in some way, shape, or form, right? Entertaining in some way, shape, or form, because going for second place is not the move. Anyway, 4 people have to go twice based off the number of people that are available to swim. You get 1 attempt, so you can only go down as 1 attempt to go and get your puzzle piece. They want the one of the challenging aspects of this to be you going underwater in one swoop, getting your puzzle piece and coming back to the top. They don't want you like dunking your head down there and then going down and then going back up and then going back up. You have to wait until somebody delivers a puzzle piece before you can attempt to go again, which creates a big problem for a couple of people. I'd like to say right before this challenge started, Nerese goes over to the camera and she describes, because during the team powwow session or the team meeting, don't know if I'm supposed to say powwow because that's in reference to a group of people that I'm not a part of. Anyway, there's a team meeting and they're talking about who feels like they're confident swimmers. Apparently Berna, Melissa, and Nerese say they do not feel like they fall into the category of confident or strong swimmers. Nerese has a conversation with the cameraman over. She's like, I can swim. I just don't think I can swim like a fish, which is understandable because at the end of the day, lest we forget, swimming is not about like being Michael Phelps. It is about being able to survive to see the next day while in water. That's it. Nothing else other than that. Now, there are other people who are like turned swimming into a competition, understandably so. It is extremely difficult. It takes a lot of talent, and in some cases, physical anatomy does lend itself to that. But facts are, swimming is about surviving, and if you can swim to survive, you win. Because you're alive. Congratulations. The water is a dangerous place to be. And we'll talk about one thing you don't do when somebody's in the fucking water, doing something that they're very nervous about. Anyway, Nerese reveals that she's got a necklace, and it says it's Scuba Nelly. It's a Scuba Nelly necklace, which I find to be funny because that's a reference to last season where Nelson finally broke his daily streak. Losing streak, because he had like the longest daily he had the longest drought without winning a daily challenge in the history of the show. It was something like some crazy number like 75 or something like that, and it felt like it was one of those moments where because Nelson won 3 daily challenges last season, if I'm not mistaken with Nerese, and everybody was like, oh, he finally got somebody who can keep his mind focused while he's doing this, and she can harness his ability and his know-how and his skill and all this kind of stuff like that while keeping him focused on his eventual end goal. And that's basically what happened. Like Nelson had his best season in a long time last season. So he called himself Scuba Nelly because he won a swimming challenge, and I felt that was pretty funny. It was one of the funnier moments of last season, and I appreciate that. Anyway, back to this super dangerous puzzle that is happening in open water, semi-open water. I say semi-open water because obviously it's like happening in a bay, not in the actual ocean or anything like that, but technically in the ocean. Nerese gets to her buoy. Melissa gets to her buoy. Big T gets to her buoy. Big T fails on her first attempt, so she has to wait a while before she can go back under. The thing that's annoying about this is the good swimmers use their brain, and they actually like swam down and pulled the rope that was holding the puzzle pieces, and there's a weight at the other end of it that makes it a buoy, right? That holds the buoy in place. There's a weight at the end of it, and They swim down there. They pull on the rope so that they can fight against the fact that they have a life vest on, which is constantly trying to pull you up to the surface. So like it instead of making it 10 times harder trying to swim against the life vest straight down into the water, they pull on the rope that guides them down, and they know exactly where the puzzle piece is without necessarily even having to see it. In some cases, they pull it out and take off. Now, there's a combination of things that go wrong here, and I'll just describe what happened. Melissa fails on her first attempt and doesn't get her piece, her puzzle piece, until seemingly there's like less than 5 minutes remaining on the clock. Don't know if it's the actual edit, or don't know if that's how the edit was cut or whatever, because like TJ says 5 minutes, under 5 minutes or whatever, and then they're still showing Melissa standing or sitting by her buoy or swimming by her buoy, trying to work up, I guess, the nerve to go underwater, or she's just waiting until she can actually go underwater, because there's like a rule where you can't go under until somebody else delivers their puzzle piece or something like that. You can't take your next attempt until somebody delivers their puzzle piece. So Melissa is just sitting there doing her thing. Nerys, on the other hand, Melissa finally gets her puzzle piece and swims over, and the puzzle pieces float, so people were able to use them like, man, what are those things called? They use them for like little kids. They're like boogie boards. There you go, boogie boards. They use it like that, and they're able to swim a little bit faster to where the puzzle is being solved at. Nerys fails 3 different times and actually doesn't even get her piece. So Ed has to swim back after going to get one of the extra pieces. Remember I said 4 people had to go twice? Ed was one of the people that went twice, and then he went a third time to go get Nerys's piece from underneath her buoy, which we never found out which depth hers was at. Maybe she just got one that was too far down, but it definitely was like Nerys was terrified. Nerys did not feel comfortable going underneath the water. Nerys did, because she couldn't see, which that is a thing, but it's like it's a lack of experience type of deal, right? Like it's that's usually what it is. It's an experience type of deal. Like it's not even it's like being uncomfortable opening your eyes underwater is an experience thing. She also did not attempt to pull the rope from what I saw in all 3 of her attempts, which is tough. But facts are, when you go underwater, or like when you're in the water in general, the temperature of the water is a big factor for a lot of people, especially if it's colder than normal. That can actually sap a lot of people of their energy to swim. They were already talking about when they got to the buoys how far the swim was, so it was probably, I mean, they were probably at their rope's end in terms of like what they could do swim wise for multiple people, but they still found a way to do it. Everybody except Nerys. And they cut to the diary entries. Raven makes a great point, and this is one, kids, if you're watching at home, if you ever want to be on the challenge, this is an excellent point. I'll do a spoiler to make this point. Nerys is in a situation where she clearly held the team back from being able to be successful and almost cost them $50,000 by herself, because she did directly correlate to the puzzle piece not being at the station fast enough, not being able to get it solved fast enough, and then being able to carry it over. Now, what we do have is also an example of the power of an alliance. Nerys at no point was actually legitimately on the table for elimination because of her poor performance. People were so focused in on getting out a select group of people that they put on a short list, and because their alliances are so intertwined with each other that it's hard to swing enough votes to get one person. It's going to get even harder because, you know, they're eliminating all the people who are outside there. They're technically taking out alliance members that already exist, but then again, everybody thinks they're in alliance with somebody at some point. It's just about how strong that alliance is when it gets tested, right? But Nerys was a perfect example of like her alliance is strong. There was no point whatsoever where she was legitimately considered for being one of the names said in terms of votes or being called down to elimination, even though we're not like really sure what Nerys can do in more than one elimination situation, right? So, and that was because that was the benefits of her coming in paired up with one of the veteran players. So that helps a lot. And what was this? Yeah, so the Ed gets the third piece. They put all 4 puzzle pieces together. By the way, they're very much like the Trivial Pursuit triangle pieces, but like each one is assorted by a certain color. I would also think that some of them are different sizes based on the location they are in the circle. Even though they all look the same, they're all slightly different. Anyway, they all lock them into place. They swim over to the station. Everybody gets on the platform. They hit the button. The smoke comes out, and the timer says there's 3 seconds left on the clock. So if Ed had not left exactly when he left to go and get Nerese's puzzle piece, and then got her back to the location, to the puzzle solving location, they would not have won the $50,000. There was no question about that whatsoever. So going back to the concept, like I was saying before, the challenge for this daily challenge, swimming endurance, there were multiple people who complained about the distance. The strong swimmers didn't complain about the distance. They were more concerned about how fast they were in the water, because everybody knows that like being able to swim is a big part of being able to win the challenge in some way, shape, or form. Not necessarily gonna say it's like the end all be all, because when you do swimming stuff in the final, especially when you don't plan on putting the finals contestants into like livable, like regular sleeping quarters or whatever. Like if there's plenty of them where essentially they're camping outside, and if you are a producer for a show, you don't want to do that to people who are like in a foreign country out in the wilderness, essentially. Like in some, like you talk about, they're in Croatia right now, right? So the chances of you getting hypothermia after you go swimming in water in Croatia and then get to your campsite after running like 5 miles and having your body temperature sky high and then having it drop as the sun is going down in Croatia, no matter what time of year it was summer in Croatia, so it's not as cold as it normally is, but it's still pretty cold. You increase the chances of somebody getting hypothermia and being pulled, and potentially, like hypothermia is life-threatening if unchecked for a long period of time, and it does affect you drastically, because your body temperature is a part of how your brain gets the heat that it needs to be able to survive. Anyway, hypothermia, super dangerous. Look it up. It's well documented. There's a reason that every naval force on the planet gives their sailors naval understanding of hypothermia, because when you're like, you've ever seen Deadliest Catch, there's so many instances where they talk about like, yeah, man, like it's so important for somebody to be watching the top of the ship while people are working out there on the deck, because if somebody slips into the water or a wave hits the boat and somebody's not harnessed in or something like that and they get swept away into the ocean, you got about like 30 seconds, a minute or something like that to find them before you can't see them, and let alone at night, right? Like it's pitch black all around you. The only light that you have is the light that comes from your overhead lights, right, that you brought out there. If somebody's in the water, they get swept underneath the wave. There's no telling how far away they get pushed away from the boat, and then continue to get pushed away because the ocean not taking no days off just because you fell in the water, right? That's why it's so important to be fully aware of how dangerous hypothermia is, and that's probably why we never see too many swimming or not very many swimming challenges during some of the colder seasons of colder locations and winter filmed seasons of the challenge. So yeah, that's all I got to say on that. Long lesson on hypothermia, kids. Stay warm and stay dry. That'll keep you alive long enough, right? So the challenge for this daily was the open water swimming. That's always tougher just because the water is sloshing around, the waves, the power of the tide, the depth of the water affects how you feel when you're in the water. Obviously, when there's less water, you find yourself less buoyant, so you can sink faster. When there's more water, you find yourself, it's more difficult for you to go down into the water to find a way to get things, and that was something that people pointed out as they were doing diary confessions afterwards or whatever. Task delegation based off of skill set was also extremely difficult for a lot of people on this. And what I mean by that is that there were, you had to figure out if you were like legitimately a strong swimmer or not, because there's people who want to be the star of the show because they don't feel confident where they're at in terms of their alliance or something like that, and they feel like performing well in the challenges is something that'll protect you from being voted in. That's not the case. Case in point, that water challenge in episode 2, Chauncey wasn't the only person that couldn't clip in to the human ladder. It was also Nerys, and Nerys just didn't go into elimination. At some point, they got to say her name, man, because she looking weaker and weaker by the episode, man. I can't even lie. Her social game is really important. She's got the ear and the belief and faith of a lot of powerful players and stuff like that. Nerys is obviously super duper smart in terms of how she attacks like puzzles and everything, but when it comes to like the actual physical competitions, she keeps coming up short almost every single time, man. And at some point, that becomes a liability, and you got to start thinking about who you want to run a final with. Even if there's only one champion, I got a strange feeling the team aspect of this season does not end just because the control phase is over. But yeah, task delegation, swimming endurance, and of course, open water swimming, always extremely difficult, especially when you talk about the challenge, because they do not give a shit about whether or not you can swim. Let's move forward, shall we? Let's talk about the winner. The winner is everyone. The current total now becomes $406,000 plus $50,000 for them because they were able to complete the challenge in under 15 minutes, which was the objective set out by TJ. Fantastic job from everybody. This is like the best looking teamwork they've had, even better than last episode when they had like smaller groups of people at key locations, and there was just a bunch of people who were like driving around ATVs and stuff, right? Like they didn't really have like a ton of say or anything, but for the most part, this one actually took everybody's coordination and everybody's work, even though the tasks were like real kind of singular to certain people. It was like, swim out here, get puzzle piece, put puzzle together, get on shore, all that kind of stuff like that. That pans out, and it pays off big because it keeps morale for people higher, right? Let's move on to deliberation. So people start having conversations beforehand about what names they're going to say. There's in particular one conversation that's highlighted between Raven, Corey, and then Michelle walks in to tell Corey that his name is being said by other people about potentially going into elimination. Huey and Corey are the names that are mentioned going into deliberation. Huey kind of gets, as you would imagine, a person who's been really talkative all season, kind of snaps. He's upset. He feels betrayed. He thinks that his name shouldn't be said at all, even though Huey hasn't really done much. He usually doesn't on the seasons that I've seen him on so far. And you know what he really does do a lot of? The most annoying shit on the planet. Huey is loud and he talk a lot. And that, you know, we're in theory, based on filming, this is week 4 of the show. It could be a month into filming. It could be 3 weeks, 2 weeks. It could be a month and a half into filming. And people been sitting at the house. They've been listening to Huey talk, and they can hear him from 3 rooms away. They've been hanging out at the club, and Huey been talking to somebody next to him, and they can hear every goddamn word he's saying, even though the DJ got the music maxed the fuck out. They can still hear Huey every single step of the way, man. And that, at some point, that gets annoying. As a person who talks too much, can confirm, if you are around the same group of people for a month in total and they don't have like headphones they can put on, they don't have TV they can turn on, they can't go somewhere, they can't drive and go to the grocery store and come back and take like 2 hours to go to the grocery store and come back, they can't go to the mall, they can't do all this, and they just gotta sit around and they gotta talk, and you like to talk. So every time somebody having a conversation and you hop in, even if it doesn't involve you, you annoying a good chunk of people. And that's what it seems like kind of is going on with Huey. A lot of people don't respect his ability to actually compete. They think he's like the weakest guy left in terms of strength, athletic ability, and comprehension when it comes to these playing these challenges and stuff like that. So that makes him the weakest link, and it's easy to say his name, right? Corey, on the other hand, has proven himself quite the sneaky snake, if you will, in terms of like the political game. Obviously, he's a physical threat. The dude's gigantic, and he's jacked. He's really tall. He's got a lot of advantages. He's clearly very strong, and he's level-headed, whereas like Huey tends to be like rather emotional about a lot of different things, which is understandable. You're stuck and trapped in a house in isolation, all that kind of stuff. Huey has a background where he has come from like a really oppressed group of people. He is a gypsy who grew up in a caravan, right? He is also a gay man, so oppression on that level, right, on a pretty consistent basis. And I think Huey makes it pretty based off of like who he is as a person. It doesn't seem like he's really out here trying to hide his attraction to men or who he likes and all this kind of stuff like that. So like he wears the fact that he's gay on his sleeve, right? And that's fantastic because that's the theme of this episode. It's called I'm Coming Out for a Reason. Huey and Corey, who just so happen to both be gay, also are a big part of what is going on right now in the show. And it's Big T coming out. I don't know if people, there's nothing that hinted at the fact that Big T was bi or gay or something like that, whatever she may be, pansexual. But other than like last episode when she was like real cuddled up on Melissa, but that's how ladies hold each other, especially in like a pool setting sometimes. But yeah, no, congratulations to Big T. It's got to be tough. Growing up in a household, she talked about how she grew up in a strict household where she never felt like she could be herself, which is always horrifying when you hear people say that as a black person who gets like semi-demonized for existing on a regular basis. I can't hide the fact that I'm black. That's just how it is, and it weighs on you, man, every single day. And I think Big T spoke to a lot of people who have to deal with it from both ends, right? Like there's some people who are lucky enough that their family accepts them for who they are. And then there's some people who are not so lucky and they have to hide who they are from everybody except like a handful of people who are their chosen family. And sometimes it takes a while to find those people, right? And Big T is clearly, for whatever I have to say about Big T as a competitor in the show, the young lady has a lot of bravery. She was adopted. I don't know if you remember that from a couple years ago, but she's adopted and basically like had her whole life turned upside down when she got adopted. And yeah, man, it's wild. It's wild. She's gone through a lot, and to get to the point where she feels comfortable coming out on like global television because the challenge is watched worldwide, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of bravery. Even for, by the way, I'm not saying she's more brave than anybody else. It takes a lot of bravery just in general to like, not just tell like your closest friends, not just to tell your family, but to be like, I'm me. And this is me every single day, 24/7, 365. And there's nothing you can do to take away or make me feel bad about existing. And shout out to her. I'm sure she inspired a lot of other people to get to the point where they feel comfortable doing something like that. She also, I say this all the time, like in my personal life, but there's just some people who I was talking about earlier on the show, like a couple minutes ago, where it's like Huey wears the fact that he's gay, like on his sleeve. He's always talking about, like even during the ATV challenge, the buggy challenge, last episode, he was talking about how, oh man, he really enjoyed being in the car with, I think he was in the car. No, it wasn't Jay. I forgot who he was in the car with, but he was like, I really enjoyed being in the car with him. It felt like I was on a date. And he makes sure like off rip, he is about the dudes. He's about the dudes. He's kissed like 3 dudes in the house already. I'm glad the house is like pretty open in terms of like welcoming to Huey and stuff like that. I'm glad that Huey feels comfortable enough to be himself around everybody, right? And I know he does that. I'm sure Huey comes off like he's the kind of dude that he don't care if you hate the fact that he exists. He is him. And if you hate him for existing, he is thankful to be alive and thankful to be existing so that you can stay the fuck mad. So yeah. Anyway, same thing with Big T. Like Big T obviously is a person that, based off the way she carries herself, and I don't know Big T in her personal life or whatever, but if she never wanted to tell anybody she was gay, she wouldn't have to, ever, right? And I'm sure if you got to know her, you would learn that about her and stuff like that, but, I'm sure that every time I see a person who looks like a quote-unquote conventional straight person or looks like they're hetero-presenting in the normal world kind of deal, I always think like, oh, that lets people know like, hey, man, like there's no specific way that a gay person looks or a queer person looks. And if you think that, you're kind of dumb. So shout out to Big T. I know it's hard. I mean, I don't know it's hard. I've never come out. Like I'm a straight guy. So me saying I know how tough it is super ignorant, but at the same time, like I know how human history has worked towards queer people. I've read plenty of it, and it's got to be tough to look that directly in the face and still have courage to be like, nah, this is who I am. Anyway, deliberation. Huey and Corey both speak. Corey apologizes for saying Zara's name, which is seemingly, I don't think he actually means he was sorry. I think he's more sorry that he got caught, which is exactly what you should be. You shouldn't be sorry about the only reason that he's even getting brought up as a name for elimination is because he said Zara's name, because Zara has more power than he does. Zara has more power than he does right now. And, I think Zara is afraid to go into elimination. She should be. I've seen her compete before when it comes to elimination type stuff like that. She is a person that is more suited for like running and conditioning than like lifting and fighting and scrapping and stuff like that. And her puzzle solving seems average based off what I've seen in her compete in the show. So we'll see. She is players like that. You can always tell who the players that are the weakest are, because they are the ones who are like terrified to go into elimination, right? And then there's people like, I'll give credit to Melissa. Last week she said, you go into it, I'll vote myself into elimination so I can call your name and send you home. She said that to Berna in her face, while Berna was like kind of trying to mean mug her down about the whole like, you were bullying me while we were at the pool type of deal. And there's not too many players that are built like that. So big props to Melissa. What else do we got? Oh, deliberation. Like I said, Huey kind of snaps off and he kind of sets himself up. He once again, these deliberations are so funny because they're not necessarily necessary, because these people are talking to each other all day, all the time about game. And the deliberation is just, hey man, y'all are going to meet here and you're going to tell us everything you've been saying inside the house that people can't see on camera. If you got something you need to say that addresses to everybody, even though everybody already knows what you've been saying, or they know somebody who's told them what you've been saying, or you went and you talked to every person in the house type of deal, you know what I mean? The deliberation is for TV purposes, which is, of course, I appreciate greatly, because all but one time has a person absolutely bungled deliberation. I would say Raven is done the best when the cameras are on and they're in a circle, in terms of like, hey man, I've been hearing my name go around type of deal like this. I think I do this. I think I do that. And then she triggered this like really corny reaction from everybody where they went around and they talked about why they should stay in the house type of deal. And believe it or not, the person who talked the most shit about Raven and how he felt like she was boring actually kind of like rose an annoyance level for some people based off the diary entries. It was James. James kept talking about how he's a leader and he can't accept leadership from other people. I'm like, oh great, in a team game you can't accept leadership from other people. He talked about how he's the best, he's the tallest, and then I guess he forgot to mention how he almost got eliminated the week before. But it's real convenient what people remember and don't remember. Anyway, that's what happens in deliberation. It's popping off. It's doing its thing. Let's talk about some numbers. Let's talk about some names and some numbers. They go to the arena like we all expect. By the way, the turn up session, the club session was Big T's coming out party. Shout out to her. Anyway, they go to the arena where they send people home, and here's what happens. It's bad news. They talk about the top two names that are being said on people's lips. Huey, Coriel. Bunch of people burn. Bunch of ladies burn, I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly. I think Melissa said Asif, because there's a bunch of people who didn't want to vote for Huey because Huey is one of their friends. And I just like to point out, Huey is a real one for this one. He told Berna, because there's a bunch of people who voted. James voted for Column, and he said some snarky remark back. They were joking back and forth. All these other ones are burn votes. So Huey told Berna that if everybody's saying his name, you need to say his name too, because that's how tight of friends they are. he was like, you don't need to blow your game up trying to save me. I'm on a sinking ship. It's already over, right? Like these numbers right here, and Berna already being on the outs, her trying to not go with the House vote and all this kind of stuff like that, and drawing some, quote unquote, drawing some attention, right? Because Berna hasn't won anything, and nobody's really won anything. And even if you help out a ton in the team advantage or the team challenges, there's no guaranteed way for you to win immunity from being voted out. So everybody votes for Huey, including his bestie Berna, because he told her to. Because that's a real friend right there. Once again, it's so funny how the loyalty comes from the people who are the underdogs in this situation, where the top dogs are the ones that are being the most deceitful. So, sorry, hold on a second. Where you got the Jays and Michelles that are constantly trying to trick people and stuff like that. So, anyway, Huey gets called down. And it's time, ladies and gentlemen. Elimination. It's rather simple. It's called How I Roll. The way you describe it is, I need you to imagine, it's a car. This, by the way, I wrote it down here at the bottom. This is an elimination that is 100% inspired by the carnival game influencer peoples. There are people who are on the internet, on TikTok, that play these carnival games and teach you how to beat them, and also show you how to game the system and show you how to make and win a bunch of different prizes and stuff like that in the system. There's this one dude who I know for sure, he buys these old machines from these like arcades. He buys these old machines from like Dave and Buster's and all these other places and stuff like that, and he has them in what I guess is his like finished garage somewhere in the Midwest, and he plays on them all the time to win the prizes. And he does TikToks. I'm like, hey, so like look at the, like, I can tell you how strong the claws are in the claw machine because I have a claw machine here. He measures the grip strength. He puts prizes. He's a guy who's so good at the claw machine. He goes and gets prizes at claw machines, and his goal is to empty out the claw machines. He actually donates the stuffed teddy bears that he gets to like kids who have cancer or kids who can't like afford presents and stuffed animals. He's really cool. He takes some of them and he puts them in his claw machine at his house, and he sells some of them on Amazon, I guess, or whatever. But he donates some of them to kids who can't, like, it's got to mean something, because I'm sure a lot of these toys like repeat themselves. So there's got to be some kid who's like always like passing by a claw machine, or has gone to like Chuck E. Cheese, or I'm sorry, Chester Entertainment Cheese, one of these places, and they've seen the toy that he got him. He's seen the toy that's in the claw machine, and they get that from him, donated to him and stuff like that. It's really cool, man. Anyway, I say all that to talk about how there's like this pocket universe of carnival influencers on TikTok that have that show you how to beat all these games. They go to they get on TikTok Live and they show you how to play these. So imagine, some of you have probably seen this. There's two metal railings, and they're side by side, and they go up and down like a little roller coaster ride. There's two hills, and at the end of it, there's a little upslope. And your goal is to get it to land. So, like, after the two hills, your goal is to get it to land and calmly come to a stop in between the upward slope right here and the hill slope that's over here. But in this challenge, there are 10 boxes on the ground, like 10 little metal cages on the ground. There are what seem to be relatively heavy balls. They're not bowling ball heavy. You can tell that, like, Huey and oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, Huey calls out Kylan, Melissa's guy, the guy we talked about before, who revealed that he's on the spectrum in some way, who's absolutely obsessed with the game. And we'll talk about an example of how we know that he's obsessed with the game after I describe the elimination challenge. So these two little metal railings, they go up and down. They have these 10 boxes in a circle, perfect, or well, they're different distances from the this pillar that has this apparatus with the little two hills on it, right? And it turns in a complete 360 degree angle, and you pick up the balls. You get the 10 balls, and you got to roll them. Only one ball per box. You got to roll the ball on the little apparatus, and it has to land inside the box, right? You do that 10 times, and you get to stay in the game. This is a combination of subtlety, skill, and speed, right? Kylan understands that it's speed, right? Huey does not. So one of the key things that they point out at the beginning of this, and it seems like he does a better job of it towards the end, Kylan, when he releases the ball, he's right next to the ball as it's rolling down the little apparatus towards the box. So either it goes in the box and he turns the front end that drops the ball into the box or whatever, and he turns it right next to the next box, or he picks up the ball faster as soon as it misses and he resets and does it again, right? And he gets to see how the power transfers from the kind of push that he put on it. Where Huey is pushing it, it's going over, and it's going over the hill, and it hits the ground, and then Huey waits 3 seconds, and then he starts running towards the ball, right? Like that's a whole 10-second advantage that Kylan is getting over Huey, and over time, that even if Kylan is inaccurate, which there seems to be a point during the elimination where he kind of gets into a rhythm. Same thing with Huey. Actually, Huey almost comes back twice in this game. Because Kylan starts freaking out towards the end because there's some boxes that are different distances from the end of the little apparatus, which means that you got to put more power onto it. So the amount of power that you have to put onto it changes from box to box, and that's the real part that they didn't explain all that well, but you see it later as it starts to develop. And then on top of that, they're not like really dug into the ground all that well. So once your ball hits, this like relatively heavy ball hits the little box, the box moves. So it's slightly like to the left or slightly to the right or slightly further back or slightly further front. And that changes what you have to do on the fly, right? So you're like having to run. Your heart rate's pretty high because you're running to pick up the ball. And then, it's hard you see it all the time. Professional basketball players shoot almost the exact same basketball like thousands and thousands of times over the course of a week at a super high heart rate while being in some of the best shape on like human beings can be in on the planet, and they still miss shots. So you're trying to do that, having seen this game for the first time ever, and trying to catch your rhythm while also having to stop, go get the ball, reset, all that kind of stuff like that. Eventually, Kylan wins this one because he pulls away. At one point, he gets like 3 in a row, and Huey just never catches up. That is pretty much how this episode ends. I would also like to point out Huey going home, Kylan getting called down into elimination. Corey is one of the names that was on some people's lips, according to what people were saying. This would have been the third consecutive one black person put into elimination. It did not happen. And then 2, it would have been the third consecutive United States Alliance member that ended up in elimination as the primary vote from the House, which would have obviously helped the UK. But now another UK member is headed home. So they lost Jessica in the first one. The U.S. lost Chauncey in the second one. And in the third one, Raven sent home Huey. So it's basically even when it's all said and done. Are we counting Big T as an international, or are we counting her as an American? Because I could have sworn Big T was on Team World for World of Worlds. Anyway, they send home Huey, and Kylan stays, right? That is the interesting aspect of all this. Like like I said, once again, these alliances are fake. They keep trying to push this on the show, and I think it's a group of people who have a vested interest in everybody else believing that it's just the United States and the internationals versus each other, when in actuality, like there's even a point during this episode where Nerys talks about her alliance, and it's like 20 people. There's 20 people in the house, and 15 of them are in an alliance with Nerys, allegedly, right? So the cutting room floor is coming quickly for a lot of people, and they're going to find out just how aligned or allied they are with some of these people who do and don't have power on a pretty consistent basis. So Jay and Michelle flipping up on everybody's just around the corner. Don't you worry, folks. Episode 5 is about to go down. At the end of this episode, TJ, once again, like he has for the past 4 episodes, hints that chaos is just around the corner. The next preview episode, and it seems like it is when Kylan comes back immediately from elimination. They turn on a clock inside of the house, and it reads 13 hours, 14 minutes, and 56 seconds or whatever, and it is the countdown to the chaos period starting. Now, going back to Kylan, I told you there was a part of this episode where Kylan reveals just how much he's dialed in. Remember, we talked about this 2 episodes ago when Kylan wouldn't kiss Melissa in front of all the crowd, and he said it was because he doesn't do PDA due to being on the spectrum and stuff like that. That, is a part of it. Some people just don't like kissing other people in public and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be because you're on the spectrum, but if that is what he believes it is for him, who am I to tell him how he feels and what he thinks, right? About himself, nonetheless, the subject that he knows a lot more about than me. Melissa has a whole thing where like he just constantly talks game all the time, forever and ever, and he never he talks game all the time, and she's trying to use him as a tool to like forget about the game, and all he wants to talk about is the game. He mentions I think it's like before the elimination or afterwards or something. He's like, well, every time Jordan's won, Jordan's gone down into elimination at least twice to be able to win the championship, and if I got to do that, so be it. Who knows that stat? Who knows statistical analysis like that? Because that's not like random facts that people put out there. That's people who study the game. He keeping stats like we're talking about the NBA and the NFL. That's how dialed in he is. Hopefully it pays off for him. Seems like a smart dude. He might be one of the few people I'm actually rooting for this season. I think everybody runaway is rooting for Horacio. He seems like the only, because everybody thinks he's like the good guy, right? He's one of the few people that didn't get his hands dirty last season because he didn't have power ever to vote somebody in, and they picked on him so much that he beat the shit out of every person that they put in front of him. And a lot of people believe, including myself, he probably could have made a run at that thing. He probably could have been one. He could have had one of those magical seasons, him and Olivia, one of those magical seasons together where they get the most elimination wins and win the final, thus cementing them as like the new stars. A lot of people like Olivia because Olivia makes a lot of funny jokes. She makes a lot of puns. She's also like, she's a grinder. Like, she's super strong, super talented as an athlete, and obviously her background as an Alaskan tomboy and Alaskan tomboy who looks, amazing, right? She's a very pretty lady, and she now is in the house where a lot of people like her. She's not going into elimination every other week. She's running the roost. Like, she's one of the top people in this entire show, just like Horacio. Horacio is not getting called out. Everybody knows. You may not have watched last season, but everybody knows what Horacio and Olivia did last season, and nobody wants a part of that. They are running this game. Jay and Michelle may think they're doing something or whatever, but everybody knows that they have a terrible elimination record. So, if it really come down to it, Olivia and Horacio having to eliminate Jay and Michelle for 2 seasons in a row, I would love it. Anyway, that's all I got for this episode. Hit me up, write in the comments. I think I wrote some questions in the description. Let me read them off. While I'm reading those off, make sure you like and subscribe. Also, put in hashtag cocaína nose for my runny nose. I did take the Zyrtec. The Zyrti is fighting hard, ladies and gentlemen, fighting hard. So I got 5 questions for you. Answer in the comments. Who's the biggest whiner in the house? What did you think of the control stage? Because it seems like it's either over or there's only one more episode left of it. Because now there's been 2 women and 2 men eliminated from each side, which I think means there's 20 people in total left in the house. So that would be the perfect number to start the next stage of the chaos period, especially if you're going to split them into 2 teams of 10 and figure out a way to do it, because now there's an even amount of men and women. They made a distinct effort at the end of the daily challenge. They said, I think we need to get rid of a couple of guys. It seems like there's too many guys around here. So let me know what you thought of the control stage, because I think this is I think this has never been done in terms of like this formatting, because there's never been a period where the entire house has worked together. What did you think of the control stage? Who's eliminated next? The top 3 most devious people in the house. I said Jay and Michelle in no specific order. And I also said Mariah as well, because Mariah is falling in love with young James. Young James, who I don't know his age, but he has the berries and cream haircut, but like for a grown-up. And somehow has a tan, even though I don't think he's a type of person that tans. Anyway, who's coasting and who's dominating this season. Let me know who you think is coasting and who's dominating. And that's all I got, man. I'm out of here. I'm finally going to stop sniffling into the microphone. You don't have to worry about me dropping my NFL podcast. I'm doing that tomorrow on the Broke Boy Sports podcast. Make sure you hit me up. We're talking about all things sports. Hit me up on Twitter, FB_playbook. Hit me up on my personal Twitter account at the Ashton J, and we can chop it up about anything that you want. Like it says in my both of my bio or my Twitter descriptions, I answer all questions. So I'm out. Wash your hands, wash your ass, be kind, do good, and most importantly, go home, Roger. One last one for the road. One last sniffle for the road. Get out.